Hi, friend. Ashley here. Welcome to the Unlock Your Dream podcast. I'm here to guide you along your journey to unlocking your dreams to achieve the best life that you can imagine possible. From my journey in medicine as a PA and then some in the corporate world, I always still desired a little bit more out of life. It wasn't until I met some people who had seen their dreams realized that it occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, mine could come true too. Come along with me as we get to know some of these friends of mine and hear their stories of unlocking their dreams. Hi, friend. Welcome back this week to the Unlock Your Dream podcast. I am so excited and grateful to have Victoria Winter on of Victoria Winter Consulting. Just a little bit of background about her. She is a business strategist who thrives on breaking the mold, which we're going to dive into. And even just getting to know her a little bit, I see that as a total theme in your story. She has 2 nearly decades of experience in retail and entrepreneurship. She's built her career by challenging the way things have always been done. We have got so much to unpack with that. She's run a successful apparel store. She launched and manages her sister's art career. So she truly has a knack for combining practical business tools like AI, email marketing, all the things that are all the buzzwords right now. And now with her consulting business, she partners with modern creatives and small businesses to create tailored strategies that align with their goals and values, proving there's no one size fits all path to success. So Victoria, welcome to the Unlock Your Dream podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love any chance I can get to talk about creative ways of doing business. And, I think my group text and my husband really appreciate when I find new outlets for it.
I love that, girl. Well, I'm going to let you dive on in to share anything you want to share. That's quite the background. I'm so excited to dive into that. But sharing anything you want to share about your consulting business and just how you kind of got where you are.
Yeah, I love my origin story. I think, it's such a good starting point that I always remind people is like, you kind of have to delude yourself in being like, when I'm giving my interview to insert your dream thing, like always be tweaking that story as you go because it gets you into that mindset. And I do love my origin story because there was a while where I thought because I wasn't properly trained, because I came from small town in Louisiana, that meant I these skills weren't valuable, but what I've learned is it's quite the opposite. So I'll just dive in about how I got started in this. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana originally. I went to LSU and I got my first retail job when I was 18 and it was in luxury accessories and I just fell in love. I had an amazing female mentor who really had an authentic business that she was able to work with her daughter with, and it was just so interesting. And she was sharp. She had an advertising agency before, so she was just a really great business strategist. So after I graduated LSU, I was like, I think I want to stay in retail. Like I just had this pull, and everyone thought I was insane because I thrived in school. I'm very smart. I always did well. And I think when you go into a realm where people kind of put it into a like, that's not a real job,
Mhm.
they're like so confused. But I'm like, I think, for me, I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond. I mean, it makes me feel better. So I started managing a store in Baton Rouge right when like Instagram came out. This was 2011, 2012.
Wow.
And I was like, this is cool because we'd be texting customers pictures of new arrivals. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of like, to me, I thought of it more as like a Google Drive. Like instead of me having to send a job, it's like, oh, follow us here and then you'll see it. Like now thinking back, I'm like, it's just so funny. And so I started, and then that boss was like, that's insane. No one's going to want to see their outfits on the internet. But she was like, try it, whatever. And it blew up. That business doubled that year. And then, but the surprising thing that happened was people were starting to drive in from other towns. Like I never even thought it would reach anyone outside of our network at that point. And so my favorite people were from Lafayette, which was like an hour away. It was just like Cajun country. They were so fun. They loved to get dressed. And I was like, that's my market research. So I convinced the girl who I was working for to back me on my own venture, which could be a whole nother thing. Get good legal representation when you're 26 and starting a business.
Good to know.
Yeah. So that's an interesting, just remember when you're blind with ambition, pay for proper. Yeah, just assume you're going to be as successful as you hope you'll be, and get all your T's and I's done.
Love that.
We moved to Lafayette. My husband and I had just gotten married, and the store was profitable within 6 months. Like, it was just crazy. I fell in love with, I mean, through pain. It was hard, but like, I loved being a leader. I loved coming up with new processes. And it was just, we had the best time. I mean, I worked 14 hours a day, but it was before we had kids. So we did that for the first 5 years of the business. We opened in 2014. And then I had an amazing manager who just had fallen in my lap since day one. She was in MBA school, and she's like, I'll just do this for fun. I never let her leave. And so 5 years ago, my husband and I decided that we wanted to move to Mount Pleasant to be closer to my sister. And it was a huge leap of faith. The store was doing great. We had a great house. Like, it was, none of it made sense on paper, but our hearts were just pulled to do it.
Mhm.
So I was like, you know what? The store was like on such good level footing. It was just a great, like, we've been hitting a really nice ceiling, but we knew it was a ceiling in sales within that realm. I knew I didn't want to open up more brick and mortar locations. This was around when Shopify was really getting more user friendly. So I was like, I'll just dabble in the online world, and I can do that remotely. I've never worked remote my whole life. I've worked in retail my entire life. I was like, I'll figure it out. That was 2019. So then 2020, we move, 2020 comes around the bend, and I'm like, oh my God, I have this team that I left that, like, everything's so different. So that's when I really went from dabbling in online and e-com to going all in. And that's when I realized, being removed from the business, but still really needing to be that leader and inspiring the team, like, is where I fell in love with communication tools, really maximizing Slack, maximizing voice notes, maximizing the way that you can feel like you're there and that they have access to you, but it's not via text, and it's not calling me on my cell. It's very respectful of people's time. This is a huge thing I'm passionate about, is putting things in containers, and so everyone's mind works easier. I was on YouTube's learning code, running apps. I mean, it was just wild. So the business grew 60% that year, in the subsequent years. And so we got a warehouse. This is all just remote. And it was just it opened up my eyes to, I really got the full picture of retail world. And it was just interesting. That's now been 5 years ago. And I feel like I spent 5 years learning how to run a brick and mortar, and then 5 years running ecom. And now it's nice to have the full picture. And honestly, a lot of it, I do a lot of retail work, but a lot of the systems that we use are transferable to any type of business. So that's where it gets kind of, people are like, oh, I'm not a retail and I'm not that big of a business. I'm like, you can still start utilizing tools like Slack, like AI in your own level, but it's pushing entrepreneurs and creatives to wear that CEO hat just a little bit. Start talking to yourself in that way. Start educating yourself on new ways of doing business, even if it's just a toe step. Smallest thing, adding one automation into your business, adding one delegation, like, thing that you could delegate. Well, just start laying the breadcrumbs. So when I launched, at the same time we were growing online, my sister launched her art career. And then that was so fun because I love to just dive in and build systems on my own. And artists are the best ones that are like, go do it. I don't want to do anything. I just want to create. And so that was really fun to see a whole different world because, when you're selling products, that's one thing. And then when it's like your own creations, and there's all these different, like, the art world is just crazy. So then, from there, I started doing more consulting after. It was probably about last year when I really felt like the ecom, the online side, like, all the people were in the right seats. I could focus on it more. And so one of my clients is a psychic. I have an improv artist. I just love the creative, like, a couple podcaster content creators. Like, it's just really been fun to see who's drawn to my style of work. And it's a lot of referral, word of mouth, but now I'm transitioning into doing this more full time, and it's so fun. I'm obsessed.
Amazing, girl. What a story. And yeah, I just continue to hear you going back to like, it's not always been done that way before, and we're going to do it. And you've done the brick and mortar and you've done the e-com and had success in all values. And I think a lot of times success principles translate across so many different niches, avenues, genres, whatever it is. And you've just proven successful across them all, which is just incredible. There's so much good stuff in there to unpack about too, just like the imposter syndrome. And I feel that too. I'm from tiny town, North Carolina. And I think it comes with just this, like, it's just always been that way. But I love that you're like, nope, we're going to break that mold. And I love that you mentioned all the different niches that you work with that people don't have to pigeonhole themselves into. Quote, again, it's always been done that way. No, get a coach, get a consultant. Like we talked about even before we recorded, like you pull talent out of people and speak into them what could be and what is. And I love that you even just called out, like, start with the end in mind in the sense of how successful you're going to be and put these little systems in place ahead of time. It's brilliant. I love it. So good. So good. And I know you mentioned your original mentor just kind of investing in you as you moved into your e-com space. Who else along the way through networking or people across your story have been really influential in helping you to get where you are?
Okay. So I do think a perk, and you can probably appreciate this too. I can tell from being in a small town, from not being in. I mean, I'm obsessed with my parents, but there's no like networking going on. You have to get so comfortable with shoving feet indoors, and you have to get so comfortable in pulling up into conversations where you could talk yourself out of doing. And I mean, I just don't miss an opportunity ever to if somebody sits down next to me on a plane. And what's amazing as females is you can get a lot of information out of men because they just want to be like, of course I'll tell you all about how like technology security go. Like, and they'll just spit it all out. Like I don't miss an opportunity if somebody feels like that, and you just learn how to read a room. There's people that just don't, and it's okay. But if you're like, oh, you feel like chatting, I will just stay straight up. Hey, do you mind if I ask you like 30 questions? And then just like set the bar, and they're like, sure, Actually, it was one of the like greatest things that happened to me this summer is, I don't know, are you familiar with Lynne Twist? She wrote The Soul of Money.
No, but I have to add that.
Is like, I mean, I also make people like authors and public figures my mentors. You got to like
Yes.
dig
Yes.
in and be like, uncover it. So she
Yeah.
has just been someone who I'd heard her on like the Oprah podcast years and years and years ago. And but something along my journey was the store was very successful really quickly. And that kind of never was even my goal. Like I was still just running from a normal job. So getting those first really big payouts didn't feel like I would have thought they would have felt. Which it's such a complicated thing, but I'm like, oh gosh, you're like running towards this and you're like, I don't feel any different. Like this is kind of a lot of pressure and I don't know who I am with this. And there was a lot to unpack with that, but I'm grateful that it was at a young age because it put me on a trajectory to really be like, no, I'm not going to get caught up in these funnels and I'm not going to attach my identity, my career or my bank account. And it's a constant work. So Lynne Twist's work is something that has just really changed my life. She worked with Mother Teresa, but she also works with billionaire women in New York. In her work is bridging the gap of really the energy behind money, but she just practices like if ever I'm feeling anxious, I'll like just find a Lynne Twist podcast. And I was flying to Denver with my husband at the beginning of the summer. We just went for a weekend at Red Rock Show. And a girlfriend had texted me on the plane there. It was like, I'm in a funk. What do I do? What do I listen to? And I was like, listed out a few. I was like, these are like more specific things. I was like, but for general funks, anything Lynne Twist. And it's in her summer. 3 days later, we're in the airport. And I'm getting on the computer to just catch up on work, which is such a perk of doing what you love. Is like, I was like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what everyone's up to.
Yes.
And I look up, and it was like one of those little airport tables, like tiny. It is Lynne Twist is sitting right in front of me. And I like looked down, and luckily she had a tag on on her bag, and I go, "You're Lynne Twist." And she was like, "And who are you?" And I just was like, "Do you mind? Can we just talk for a minute?" And she just thought it was so funny. And she was like, "Yes." And she instilled so much hope in me. She was going to meet with her team, and she's old. She's probably in her 70s. She still had that energy and vitality and sparkle in her eye, the way she spoke about her work. And she was like, "Victoria, you can't listen to any of the negativity in the world right now." Because she was like, "I'm telling you, there are people doing beautiful things, and we have time. We are course correcting." And I was like, she was like, "Hey, are you on my flight?" She was going to Asheville, and I was going to Charleston. I was like, "Should I buy a ticket?" Like, and then my husband walked up, and he was like, "Who's your friend?" And I was like, an angel. But it's just those opportunities, and when you're open to it, and when I told my husband too, I was like, I feel like we're always waiting for those validation moments. Like, I was like, if I would have been like, oh, if I could just book a consult with Lynne Twist, if I could get Lynne Twist's approval, I'll put myself out there more. And then it's just so interesting when the universe is like, okay, I'm going to call your bluff. Here she is, and she just was like, keep doing it. And I was telling her how I'm just so passionate about small businesses or people that just have the morals and have the creative vision that they're going to keep striving for the top, but they're going to take people along on their journey, which is what I really feel like we're seeing this huge disconnect in corporate America. It's just been so severed. And she was just like, when she was getting on the plane, like in the line, she was like, "Keep going, just keep going." And I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep going. And so you kind of have to find mentors and just be vulnerable. And it can be so awkward. I've done it for so long that when I tell people to do this now, I'm like, it's so second nature to me. And there's an authenticity when I'm like, if you don't want to give to me, or if you don't, that's so fine. You have to be open and be totally fine. If there's no reception, no big deal. I mean, I've sent a ton of emails of people that I just admire their work, and I think I would be a good fit for their work, and they're never responded to. That's not a big deal. Like, it's just not. But then you get these like really cool people that come in, and you're like, gosh, when you're looking around, there really is magical stuff going on. Like what Lynne Twist said. Yeah. So all that is a background way of, I have had so many mentors, but because I'm open to taking those opportunities when they come.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So
Wasn't
good.
it great? I was so glad that my husband, normally I travel by myself a lot for work. And I was like, thank God you were there. I would have thought like I made that up. It's like, this is so bizarre. And he's like, just strolling up from Starbucks. He's like, "Who's that lady? How do you know her?" And I was like, "From Mother Teresa?" Like,
did you get a photo?
no, I was just, when I tell you, when she gave me permission to start word vomiting. I mean, we like had my website pulled up. Like, we were doing it all.
Wow. But like you said, I'm a big believer in sowing and reaping, and it just means that you've put some really good things out there, in my opinion, that you're just harvesting. I mean, like you had to sit in that seat at that moment for that to happen, and I don't think it's an accident. I just think it's so cool.
I don't even know where she lives. I don't think it was Denver. I feel like she must have been connecting. So bizarre.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. And it's nice when you meet your people in person and you're like, oh yeah, you're cooler or just as cool as I thought you were going to be.
And that's happened. That's been a theme of this year, is that's happened more and more. And I'm like, it's just so validating.
It's so good. Well, obviously that was a surprise twist and turn in your summer, but anything across your journey that you've just been like, man, either that was a good surprise, or maybe at the time you thought it was a failure, but looking back, you're like, oh, I can see how that actually was a success in the long run.
If we had 10 hours, I could fill them. Fill them. But not the easiest one, but going back to like in the origin story of these pivots, my husband and I talk about like, okay, we could have told ourselves this story if we wouldn't have moved, if we would have been like, you know what, it's too much. We can't pull it off. We also had a 1-year-old, like if we said, no, it's too much, we can't do it. We both had this like pull, like it was really important to do it at that time. We would have been like, thank goodness we didn't move and leave the business, because there's no way it would have gone under with the pandemic and like what we had done, right? You can so see that story you could have told yourself. When the reality was we took the risk and the business grew 60%, created more opportunities for people, grew me in so many ways, opened up so many opportunities where I had to call in a ton of favors. And that was a big part of our success. Was I have all these vendors that I've worked with for so long that I was like, hey, everybody's canceling orders. Just send them to me and I'm going to see if we'll sell them online. And it just took off from there. And the proudest moment for me in the pandemic, though, of all of it, is when everyone was furloughing, which I understand that companies had to make decisions. We didn't miss a single paycheck. We didn't do it. And that was so empowering. I was like, I'm not cutting pay. And I just don't, like, for me, I'm like, there's no such thing as free money. So even saying like the government's going to pay it, just energetically, I was like, well, if I can figure out how to do it, then we'll keep going, knowing that that's a safety net. And then it really opened up so many things. And it's just super empowering to be like, I broke that mold, where other colleagues were like, we furloughed on day one. And I was like, that's so reactive. Like, why? But if you buy into, and I think right now, this is probably the most important lesson that I think we all should be thinking about, especially if our work is in social media or whatever. There is a lot of negative news out there right now. And it's valid. There's a lot of true stories, but you get to choose, how you approach those stories, and you get to choose the emotions that you attach to those stories. So you have to be in control. You really do. And like, if I get on social media, I have very strict content diet. I have very strict how I get on. I have very strict who I look at. And people are like, that's so intense. And I was like, you're giving your energy and you're letting other people's opinions seep into your subconscious. So like, if you're okay with that, then great. But I'm just not okay with that. We got to be looking out here. We got to be thinking ahead.
Couldn't agree more. I have the same approach to it. I think you have to. I think we have some mentors who talk about, even if it's a podcast, like you said, with a mentor, or even if it's content creation or social media, whatever it is, you're spending time with these people truly. And, it's like, what are you letting in? What are you filtering in? I think even more when I became a mom, it was that thing of like, okay, there's so much just like you're filtering. What are you seeing? What are you reading? What are you taking in? Your emotions. But I totally agree with you. That's the same way I approach it. And I think it's wise. So kind of along that journey, I saw recently that you completely wiped your Instagram personally and you're starting over. Is that right?
Yes. I never really took it seriously, to be honest. And then I was like, okay, I'm a believer, I love tools, love social media, but I'm also a big believer in strategy. I was like, there was no strategy here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it was holding me back from posting at all. Like, so I just stopped posting. So, as someone who really preaches delegation and knowing what you're good at and appreciating what you're not good at and seeing in others, we had our mutual friend, Jamie, who she can have an eye, but, I just invest a lot of time in saying, this is what I want it to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, and this other people, like I have, some Gen Z clients that are just like, you millennials overthink the aesthetics so much. Like they don't care. And I was like, I know, but we do. The ship has sailed. Like I'm not going to be having my hair in a towel on TikTok. Like it's just not me. I like some curation, that's just what we like. So spending some time and really getting clear about like, okay, I'm going to be putting myself out there outside of my inner network. So I want to be really clear about how I'm presented online. So we just started over. I'm also just someone that really loves to start from scratch again. And it's something in our business that we come back to. If we're getting stuck, it's typically because we're too far from the simple version. So going back and being like, what would we do if we started all again? And then finding the opportunities to start it all again. And then have this renewed momentum. And, I was texting Jamie, I was like, I'm excited to make social media posts. And I don't know anybody that can say that in 2024. So it was just I was like, and I had I just sent her scribble scratches of like sky slide one. And then she's able to turn that into something really beautiful. And so it's something I have to invest in.
Mhm.
However, I'll just do one post a week instead of like trying to slap together. I also write a newsletter, and that's really where I encourage anyone, if you're feeling creatively stuck, Substack is such a cool platform, right? That's really growing right now. It's like kind of has social media where you can find other people. You don't necessarily need to go in there with an email list to start writing.
Mhm.
I started doing that consistently in January. Which has been really challenging because it's one of those points where you have to be okay that your tastes don't match your talents.
Wow.
And it's so uncomfortable. Writing is so uncomfortable because I want it to be just flowing. I read a ton and I want it to sound like the people I admire, but you got to crawl before you ball. So
Yeah.
putting it out publicly, though, I've always kept journals, is it's a really good accountability thing. So I feel like if you're looking for more creative outlets, being able to verbalize either interview style like this or put in writing your
Mhm.
thoughts, and then having a little accountability like this, people are going to listen to it. People could read my newsletter even though I try to hide it, like, and then they find you, and I'm like, oh gosh, has been really, really helpful in my whole creative process.
I love that. Thanks for that mindset. Yeah, it was something that was like very shocking, but I love hearing the mindset behind it. And I totally agree. Mine, I think personally, I've had since like 2014. I'm totally not the same girl that I was 10 years ago. So I've been thinking the same thing. And it was just encouraging to see, like, okay,
Yeah.
it's happening.
With strategy too, I think like I love so Instagram came out with an update. I don't know if it's rolled out yet, where you can post onto your grid without it going to a feed. So I even think you could do all one cut, like two lines of all one color to visually break it up. There's ways to do it. So if you're like, I want to pivot, but visually, how do I do it? That's a really cool feature. Um, that, they're always rolling out stuff that they don't advertise. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that could be cool for those like line breaks.
Yeah. It's kind
Like,
of like pivoting
yeah,
the seasons. Yeah. I
right.
love that. So
Yeah.
good. So obviously you are a wife, you're a mom, you're a business owner, all these roles in your life. How are you balancing doing all the things? And I know systems are big for you, so that may play in here, but
Yeah.
how do you just show up well across these different roles that you have?
So it was very hard to get it established because I always thought being creative meant that you have to be fluid. And I
Mm,
thought the antithesis to creativity was structure. I like to just flow. Whenever all those changes happened, we just moved here. Our 1-year-old stopped sleeping when we moved. Like it was just pure chaos. I realized that me flying by the seat of my pants wasn't serving anyone, especially not myself. My
mhm,
husband was suffering, my team was suffering. So that's when I really was like, okay, I actually have to take my calendar seriously. I actually have to take how we communicate as a team like really seriously, but it had to start with me.
mm,
No
yeah,
one was I couldn't just say, all right, everyone needs to be better about their calendars without me being, the serious one about it. I posted about this last week. We really do teach people how to treat us.
mhm,
So the best systems you're ever going to use are the ones you're actually going to use.
yeah,
So you can buy this whole software, you can do whatever, you can have consultants, but if you're not going to use it and you're not going to feel comfortable using it, there's no value. So we started small. Like I said, Slack is just such a underutilized. I think people attached to corporate America, Slack has changed the way that we run our business. We can just have easy communication channels. So like, and even, I'm so close with the girls that I work with. So we text a lot about personal stuff. If it dips into business, which it's so easy to do, I'm like, oh, drop it in, like, we're moving this to Slack. just so we can like compartmentalize our brains. My husband and I had to get really serious about our calendars.
Mm.
And what helped though was we were like, first of the calendar wins. So like if you want a girls' night, if you want a guys' night, first of the calendar wins. So then you're really motivated to be like, because he'll be like, not on the calendar, it's not happening. In a joking way, but we like
Yeah.
actually hope, like, sorry, not there. So just those, I would say, if you want a little more streamline in your life at all, start with a communication tool. Even if you have a team of one other person, create a Slack. Create a Slack to be like, we're talking about, with channels, social media, this. It helps everyone. And then when you want to go back and revisit those conversations, they're all right there. You don't have to scroll. I don't have ADD. At all. I have, my sister does, and it's so interesting. I'm like, wow, I don't, but getting on my phone makes me feel like I do. And I don't even struggle with that. So if I'm trying to find something in my text messages, and then it's like pinging with the kids stuff and this, it's gone. It's whatever task I was trying to do is just flown out of my head. So having some streamlined systems, even if you think you're not ready for that, it's free. So what do you have to lose? Try it on, see how it feels.
Yeah. Oh, so good. I don't have anything to add to that. Just go back and read all that again and implement it. And like you said, try it. You don't know what you don't try, but you put into place what you're actually going to do. It's like a workout or a nutrition plan. Like if you're not going to do it, it's not going to benefit you at all.
Yeah.
So good. So tell me a little bit about how people can work with you. Where can we find you online, and how do people get started if they have some questions or maybe want to just put their toe in the sand with Victoria Winter Consulting?
Yes. So, which also another thing with like, I put Victoria Winter Consulting as a placeholder for whatever I would call this thing. And it's always like, you'll never go back and change it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want it to be called this, but whatever. It gets to the point. So you can find me on Instagram under Victoria, a few underscores winter. I do have some offerings on my website. They are a little vague. I'm still in figuring out really what would be like a neat, tidy bow for complete strangers to work with me. Most of my business comes from referrals, which is nice. And they kind of explain the whole process. But what I'm offering right now, I just restructured because after kind of tweaking this for a while, I start with a month. So we do one get to know you meeting where we uncover, and I'm very big about, we have to look at, it's holistic. We have to look at two sides. I need to know about how you want your personal life to run before I can give you a lick of advice about how your business should run, because that connection is what it's all about. So we dive in deep on both. It's like, I'll use tools that I love, like human design. At the same time, I'm like, send me your birth details and send me your Shopify credentials. Like, it's just as important to look at both. So we do a deep dive on what systems you're using, email, socials, if you're selling items, Shopify, et cetera, whatever under your tech stack. And I like to go in, I comb through as a customer who's never approached your business. I go test all those welcome flows because they're probably not working, and go through that and make just like a little checklist of those things that it's so easy to miss because no one's reaching out to you, especially in this digital economy, and being like, hey, I never got a welcome flow from you. No one's doing that. So you're never going to see those missed opportunities. And a lot of times, myself included, we make things way more complicated. So a lot of my work comes to just cutting things that we're like, why is this on your website? Why are you using this tool? I don't know. Cut it. And if you find the need, what about? And then we just talk about personal brand, personal life, how you want it streamlined. Do you want to save more time, or are you willing to invest more money? Here's where you need to invest. You're ready to level up. People typically come to me when they're in a pivot. I find that most people come to me in a mid-career pivot, which I personally love. I call it the armpit. Like, it's just like, I've done it all. It worked. I feel called to keep growing. But now, knowing what I didn't know before, how much work goes into it, you get stuck because you're like, am I going to be that person? Am I going to have that energy? That's what I find that people just gravitate towards. They've already launched, which I love a pre-launch people too, but sometimes I'll send them away because I'm like, ride the delusional wave while you still have it. Come to me when you're like, ugh. I was like, but if you're excited and you're hungry, like, you don't need a consultant. You don't need a coach. You don't. You have delusion. Take it as far as you can go. A key point too in my business journey too is we did all that online growth. We're 100% organic. Never paid $1 in paid ads. It was refining our processes again and again, getting creative, staying in-house. It's like anytime I like go and look at like, okay, we could pay this money to Mark Zuckerberg, or I could hire somebody else on my team who's really creative, that makes funny content, that does better flows. And it just, yeah, like I'm like, but either way, because, you know, I'll meet with e-com consultants because we're at the level that we need to do that. And they're like, wow, that's crazy. No one can. I was like, we pay with our souls and our time and our energy. Like there's no, you just pick which one feels better. And for us, I like creating opportunities. I like finding opportunities for people. I like creating opportunities for people. That's what brings me so much joy. So I kind of feel like we're like, you know, Robin Hood. I'm like, haha, I'm going to beat your system in there. But I don't even know where I got on that. Oh, how to work with me. This is the part that I'm like, how to work on it. So you can reach out. We'll do a month. We have some homework. But what I used to just do single sessions, and then you could rebook to revisit the homework. Now that is required because the accountability factor. As I told you, I'm in an accountability group. I'm really leaning into the power of women supporting women, but like being able to call us out on our BS and be like, you said you wanted to do that. You said you invested time and money to sit with me for us to streamline this. And like, we're going to see it through. I'll hold your hand, you know, so you get access to me on Slack sponsor me. You get access to me for a month for those little questions. It's easy to pop on and ask, you know, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
I'm really good at getting people out of like sticky situations with customer. I mean, I think in a past life, my whole career was a customer service representative because I can write a damn good customer service email, and that skill set has taken me far.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, so good. Well, you make sure to pop all that into the show notes. Is there anything that you wanted to mention, Victoria, that we didn't get to?
Gosh, I guess my whole point what pushes me out of my comfort zone right now to talk about these topics is the time is now, especially for women, but I also think there's a ton of men. I'm making my husband do this because he has such a wonderful spirit that needs to be out in the world more. It's time for us to stop playing small. You're not going to look back and regret it. You just aren't. There's no more, oh, I have this little podcast. Oh, there's no more, I'm an artist on the side. We're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
We are saying, I am an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I am doing this podcast because I am so passionate about it, about XYZ. And we're telling the world that any chance that we can get. And we're proud of whatever story brought us here. So my hope is just that more people are like, okay, you know what? I did want to take a little course about my business to learn how to leverage insert blank. Yes, the time is now. And the time is, especially if you're a solopreneur, you need to give yourself a raise to CEO, and you need to start treating yourself like the owner of a business rather than an employee, because the world needs it.
Drop. I have nothing to add to that. That was incredible. I feel like I'm going to go replay that on repeat for my own like affirmation.
I make all my people, I'll say, repeat it until your eyeballs tell the story. You have to get it in your bones.
So good. Yes, and amen to all of that, girl. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, your energy, your story. You are just an incredible soul, and I'm so grateful to spend some time with you today and get this out into the world and see what comes out.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly, I love anybody DM me. I'm always, if you got a business question and I might know 10% of the answer, I'll send you a voice note.
I love it. Yeah, I'm here for the voice memos too. Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, thank you again, girl. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, friend, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Feel free to share this podcast with another friend who it may inspire. Leave a review to possibly be featured at the beginning of another episode, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the stories that could help unlock your dream for you.